Why is infectious disease a problem? So in order to understand why we have to study infectious diseases, we have to understand why it's a problem. And infectious diseases are a problem because the spread of them affects every person on the planet and every aspect of those people's lives. So what things affect the spread of disease? Things like travel raise the risk of spreading disease, especially when traveling to remote areas that are not well monitored. Immigration also spreads disease because a disease that is well controlled in one area might not be in another, and when brought over, could have major consequences. Another thing is the transportation of food that could be contaminated. For example, fruit that is brought into the country that is contaminated with, let's say, E. coli, infects someone and that person spreads it. The urbanization process also affects the spread of disease. Small towns are becoming bigger and bigger, making it easier to spread diseases since there are more people closer together. For example, it could be easier for a disease to spread in New York City versus San Marcos. With this said, we must understand that infectious disease is a problem because it spreads, and the spread of disease affects everyone. Why is it important to analyze influenza data? It's important to analyze data about the flu because that data is eventually turned into facts, statistics, etc., that then help us understand what's going on in the general population. For example, surveillance programs are used to monitor things like the intensity of the flu, the specificity of strains in communities. So again, with the New York and San Marcos example, the strain in New York could be mutating faster or could be stronger than the one in San Marcos, and a surveillance program would help us see that. And surveillance programs also help monitor things like risks that might come from the current flu strain. So without that information being analyzed, you aren't able to aid the public and do things like develop a better vaccine for the current strain, notify the proper health agency about how bad the flu is getting, and see the risks that are coming from the flu. In other words, we need data about the flu to be analyzed because it helps us understand how to handle it better. Data can be used for research that in turn help the public better understand its nature and effects. For example, a study was done on the number of hospitalizations due to the flu and categorized by the type of occupation of the patients. So they studied what industry was being most hit by the flu. The results determined that those who worked were a lower portion of those diagnosed with the flu, which would be interesting information for the public to know. Overall, the point of gathering data on the flu is not just to have meaningless numbers, but to analyze the data to better understand how the flu is affecting the population and ultimately help the public.